everyone here. I welcome you to stay with me for 15 minutes where I will tell you what I have worked on these 8 weeks. It has been a pleasure to be part of this mentorship and also a pleasure to be part of this group. My name is Andrea Galarza. I am a cultural manager and producer based in Ecuador with a background in business administration. I am a specialist in marketing. And I also have a master's degree in cultural management from a university in Barcelona. My work sits at the intersection of different fields. I started working in cinema in the documentary film festival EDOC here in Quito, in Ecuador. And then I worked at Fira Tárrega, a performing arts festival in Barcelona, when I was doing my master's degree. But then when I came back to Ecuador, I started working in contemporary art and interdisciplinary practices, like working together with Colombian Ecuadorian sound artist Oído and Venezuelan US-based fashion designer Caterina Annunciato. Since 2022, I started working as a studio coordinator at the Studio Antimundo, an art studio funded by Ecuadorian artist Oscar Santillan, who's featured in the last Faidon book, Latin American Artists from 1785 up until now. In these 8 years that I have worked in art and culture, my practice has centered on accompanying artists through their creative processes. Also, I have focused on translating ideas into structured, fundable, and context-aware projects. And this year, I focused mainly in acquiring funds for artwork production and exhibitions, mainly for Oscar in Estudio Antimundo. I think in these years, I have gotten a lot of background, and right now I am especially concerned with the moment where artistic sensibility meets reality. For example, budgets, institutions, contracts, timelines, and sustainability. So that friction exactly is where I choose to work. So more recently, my practice has expanded towards what I consider a crucial step in the cultural field, which is creating and sustaining artistic enterprises. At the Student Mondo, I've been involved not only in producing artworks, but in helping sustain an art studio as an artistic and an economic structure as well. So this includes thinking about how a practice survives over time, how it relates to institutions and markets, for example, and how it remains coherent through all of that. For me, managing and producing is not just about exhibitions. It is about a much more bigger thing, which is building the conditions for the artistic work in its variable dimensions to exist in this world. I came to this mentorship with a tiny event where cultural projects could pitch directly to private companies to fund a sponsorship. But this evolved in something much bigger and larger, which is the L.A.C. Foundation. I will later explain the meaning of the name. The main objective of this foundation is to secure and distribute private funding for artistic and cultural projects in Ecuador, creating long-term and sustainable alternatives to public funding alone. Is there enough sponsorship for every artist? I think there is a structural problem, which is basically that art needs a sponsorship to exist. So in Ecuador, as you may know, as in many places in the world, public funding exists for artistic production, for research and for producing exhibitions and artworks. And of course, it is crucial. In Ecuador, we have the Ministry of Culture, which these past 2 years have done a tremendous work to promote Ecuadorian culture around the world. In 2025 alone, I managed to fund 2 major projects through public calls, these public applications from the Ministry of Culture. Gallery reopening, which is Rudimento, which is the picture you see at the upper part, and an exhibition for a mural artist called Apitatan, which is the one you see at the bottom part. Also, through Mondrian Funds, a fund application from the Netherlands, I was able, together with Oscar Santillan, to fund part of the biggest exhibition we had this year in the Contemporary Art Center in Quito from Estudio Antimundo. In 2025, I was able to raise 55,000 US dollars for all of this. This was extremely helpful, of course, but also made something very clear, which is public funding cannot and shouldn't be the only pillar sustaining the cultural field. There is, however, hope, a key public policy in Ecuador. Private companies can receive a tax reduction if they sponsor cultural or artistic projects. As a tiny side note on this, the same happens with the sports and education. As a tiny side note on this, the same happens with the sports and education. Okay, so up until here, we have the main pillars of what will be the L.A.C. Foundation. Now, I'm gonna walk you through some graphs, so stay with me, yeah? I will explain this graph part by part. Let's start with the left chart. The important thing here is to notice the yellow box, the number of projects sponsored thanks to this incentive of tax reduction from the Ministry of Culture. You can see that in 2023, 71 projects were sponsored, and in 2024, the number grew up to 163 projects with a 129.6% increase. The right chart expresses the number of companies that sponsored projects. This number grew from 75 companies to 113 in 2024. That is approximately a 50.7% increase in 1 year. And the chart below shows us how much budget in US dollars were given to artistic projects. The blue box is the one we have to observe. It shows a tremendous increase from almost 3,000 US dollars in 2023 to almost 15,000 US dollars in 2024. This huge growth shows 2 things for me. Number one is there is an increased interest from companies in using this benefit. And number 2 is that there is a real potential to build meaningful alliances between art and the private sector. And that is exactly where the L.A.C. Foundation emerges, precisely at this intersection. Now I can explain to you a bit of the name. So the letters L.A.C. stand for Luz de América Cultural. Why? Because Quito is often called Luz de América, and that translates to the light of America, because it was one of the first cities in the region to push for independence in the 1800s. For me, this also reflects what culture and art can do. Illuminate critical thinking, create social reflection, and imagine different futures. The foundation carries this name because it aims to activate art as a guiding force, as an essential force for society. Okay, so how does it all work? The foundation operates on 2 interconnected fronts. On the one side, we work directly with private companies in Ecuador. And on the other side, we work directly with Ecuadorian artists. With the private companies, we sit down with them to discuss why art matters for society, how cultural sponsorship aligns with their values and brand identity, and how this investment also makes sense economically. With the artists, on the other side, through an access of an open call, we offer alternative funding beyond public grants. We offer guidance on structuring projects, especially budgeting, sustainability, and we also offer support to bring relevant artistic ideas into concrete, structured projects. And that is exactly where the L.A.C. Foundation works, as I've said before, in this intersection. It works as a bridge between private companies and artists in Ecuador. Luz America Cultural Foundation is, of course, not a single person initiative. It is conceived as a collaborative ecosystem involving a lot of different people. For example, producers, designers, lawyers, and financial managers, a jury for the open call, local galleries, venues, and media partners. Each role is super essential to ensure transparency, professionalism, and long term impact. And so, what happened to the original event that brought me to this mentorship? It still exists. It is now called Latir. And once artistic projects are financed, Latir becomes the moment where artists and companies publicly present their collaborations, where networks are activated, and conferences and panels reflect on the role of art in society. Latir, for me, is the visible heartbeat of the foundation, a space to share ideas, to find a common ground, and to think about new imaginaries for like a more conscious and heartfelt future. And of course, to also find a common ground between everyone involved. I, at its core, I think this project is grounded in a simple belief. Art doesn't just produce beauty, it produces awareness, empathy, and responsibility. And I have been working on this project because I truly believe that more art in the world can make us more sensitive and more reasonable at the same time. Luz de America Cultural Foundation exists to create the conditions for that to happen. Sustainability, most of all. And so that is all. I thank you all for listening. You can find me and reach me on Instagram on at Andrea Galarza with a double A at the end of my name, or on my Gmail. And I welcome you to stay close if you feel you want to know more about this project, which will be launched, let's cross fingers on this, in 2026. Thank you very much.